There are seasons in life that feel strangely quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Not the kind of quiet that brings rest. But a different kind of quiet, the kind that leaves you wondering if something is wrong. Maybe you've experienced it before. You wake up each morning and continue doing the things you know you should do. You work hard. You pray. You try to stay faithful. You try to stay patient. But nothing seems to change. The doors you hoped would open remain closed. The recognition you expected never arrives. The progress you thought you would see by now feels strangely delayed. And slowly, a question begins to grow in your mind. God, where are you? Not because you stopped believing, but because the silence feels confusing. For many people, this is the moment when doubt quietly begins to enter their hearts. They start wondering if they made the wrong decisions. They start comparing their lives to others who seem to be moving forward faster. They start asking questions like, why does it seem like everyone else is advancing while my life feels paused? Why do some people receive opportunities so easily while I feel stuck in the same place? Why does God seem silent when I need direction the most? But what many people don't realize is that this strange season of silence may actually be one of the most important seasons of their lives. Because throughout history, and throughout the stories of the Bible, there is a pattern that appears again and again. Before God entrusts someone with something greater, He often allows them to pass through a silent test. A test that nobody announces. A test that nobody explains. A test that doesn't come with instructions. And most people don't even realize they are in it. There are no obvious signs. No visible scoreboard. No moment where a voice from heaven says, "This is the test." Instead, it feels like ordinary life. Quiet, slow, uncertain. But behind that quiet surface, something deeper is happening. Because silence has a way of revealing things that noise hides. When life is full of recognition, progress, and applause, it is easy to stay motivated. It is easy to keep going when results are visible. It is easy to believe when blessings are obvious. But what about when none of those things are present? What happens when you continue doing the right thing and nobody notices? What happens when you keep working hard, but progress seems invisible? What happens when you stay faithful, even though it feels like heaven is quiet? That is when the silent test begins. And the silent test is different from the kind of challenges people normally expect. It is not always about hardship. It is not always about suffering. Instead, it is about something far more subtle. It is about what a person chooses to do when there is no reward. It is about who someone becomes when nobody is watching. Because the truth is, many people want the blessings that come from God. They want influence. They want success. They want opportunities. They want purpose. But very few people are willing to go through the quiet seasons that prepare them for those things. And this is where the silent test becomes so powerful. Because the silent test reveals something that cannot be measured any other way. Character. When life is loud and exciting, character can hide behind success. But when life becomes quiet, when recognition disappears, when progress slows down, character becomes visible. You begin to see what truly motivates someone. Some people continue walking forward with patience and faith. Others become frustrated and begin to compromise their values. Some people grow stronger in the silence. Others slowly lose hope. And that is why the silent test matters so much. Because before God trusts someone with greater influence, greater responsibility, or greater purpose, He often observes who they become in the quiet seasons. Think about it this way. If someone cannot stay faithful when nobody is watching, what will happen when thousands of people are watching? If someone cannot remain patient when progress is slow, how will they handle the pressure that comes with leadership? If someone loses integrity in small moments of silence, what will happen when bigger opportunities appear? Preparation often happens in places where nobody can see it. Not on stages, not in moments of applause, but in the quiet corners of life where decisions are made privately. And this is why the silent season can feel so confusing. Because from the outside, it may look like nothing is happening. Friends might assume you are stuck. Family might wonder why things have not changed yet. Even you might question whether you are moving in the right direction. But silence does not mean nothing is happening. Sometimes silence means observation. Sometimes silence means preparation. Sometimes silence means God is watching how you respond before He decides what to trust you with next. And this is where many people misunderstand the quiet seasons of life. They assume silence means rejection. They assume silence means failure. They assume silence means they are being forgotten. But the reality may be very different. Because the same silence that causes some people to quit is the same silence that prepares others for their greatest purpose. The difference is not the silence itself. The difference is how someone responds to it. Do they grow bitter? Or do they grow stronger? Do they lose faith? Or do they deepen it? Do they abandon their values? Or do they protect them even more carefully? These choices may seem small in the moment, but over time, they shape the kind of person someone becomes. And character determines what someone can safely carry in the future. That is why the silent test exists. Not to punish, not to discourage, but to prepare. Because before someone can carry greater responsibility, they must first prove who they are when the world is quiet. And if you happen to be in a season right now where life feels unusually silent, where progress seems slower than expected, where recognition is absent, where your faith is being tested in ways nobody else understands, you may not be forgotten. You may not be failing. You may simply be in the middle of the silent test. The question is not whether the silence will end, because eventually it always does. The real question is this: who will you become while the silence lasts? Because the answer to that question may determine what God is willing to trust you with next. Before someone can understand the silent test, they must first understand something important about how God often works. God rarely prepares people in ways that are obvious. Most of the time, preparation happens quietly. It happens in ordinary moments, in slow seasons, and in places where very few people are paying attention. From the outside, it can look like nothing special is happening. But internally, something significant is being formed. The silent test is one of the most powerful forms of this hidden preparation. It is not a dramatic event. It does not come with clear instructions. And most people don't even realize they are experiencing it while it is happening. Instead, the silent test feels like a season where everything becomes strangely quiet. Progress slows down. Recognition fades. Opportunities become less obvious. And the direction of the future feels uncertain. At first, this can feel confusing, because many people expect that if they are moving in the right direction, life should become easier or clearer. They assume that if God is pleased with them, doors should begin opening quickly. But that assumption is not always accurate. In fact, throughout history, many of the people who were eventually given great responsibility first experienced seasons where their lives seemed unusually slow or hidden. The silent test is not about external achievements. It is about internal development. It is not about how much someone accomplishes during that season. It is about who someone becomes. And that difference is important, because the world often measures success by visible results: promotions, recognition, growth, influence. But God often measures readiness by something far deeper: character. And character is not revealed when life is easy. Character is revealed when circumstances become quiet, uncertain, or difficult. Think about what happens when someone receives constant recognition. When people are praised regularly, it is easy to stay motivated. When progress is fast, it is easy to stay excited. When others are watching, it is easy to stay disciplined. But the silent test removes many of those external motivations. Suddenly, the applause disappears. The encouragement becomes less frequent. The visible progress slows down. And this creates a very important question. Will a person continue doing the right thing when nobody is rewarding them for it? Because the silent test is not about performance. It is about authenticity. When life becomes quiet, people often reveal their true motivations. Some individuals realize that they were only working hard because they expected recognition. Others discover that their faith was stronger when blessings were visible. Some begin to feel discouraged and slowly drift away from their original purpose. But others respond differently. They continue showing up. They continue growing. They continue making the right decisions even when nobody else seems to notice. These individuals understand something that many people overlook. They understand that silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes silence simply means observation. It is possible that during the quiet seasons of life, God is watching something very specific. Not your achievements, not your popularity, but your consistency. Consistency is one of the most powerful indicators of character. Anyone can remain committed when life feels exciting. Anyone can remain motivated when results appear quickly. But consistency becomes much more meaningful when progress is slow, when effort feels unnoticed, when the future remains unclear. In those moments, continuing forward requires something deeper than motivation. It requires conviction. Conviction means doing something because you believe it is right, not because it is rewarded. And the silent test often reveals whether someone is guided by conviction or by recognition. Another important aspect of the silent test is patience. Patience is one of the most difficult qualities to develop. In a world that values speed, waiting can feel uncomfortable. People are constantly encouraged to move faster, achieve more, and reach their goals quickly. But spiritual growth rarely follows the same timeline as worldly success. Some things cannot be rushed. Character takes time to develop. Wisdom requires experience. Humility often comes through challenges. And patience is usually formed through seasons where progress feels slower than expected. During the silent test, time itself becomes part of the preparation. Because waiting reveals something important about a person's mindset. Some individuals interpret waiting as failure. They assume that if things are not happening quickly, something must be wrong. Others interpret waiting differently. They see it as an opportunity to grow stronger internally while external circumstances are still forming. The difference between those two perspectives can shape an entire life. People who become impatient often make decisions that compromise their long-term purpose. They may chase opportunities that appear faster but lead them away from their true calling. They may abandon meaningful goals because the journey feels longer than expected. But those who remain patient develop a deeper sense of trust. They learn that not every season of life is meant for rapid progress. Some seasons are meant for preparation. Another element of the silent test is humility. Humility is not simply about thinking less of yourself. It is about understanding that growth is an ongoing process. When people receive recognition too early, humility can sometimes disappear. Success can create the illusion that someone is already fully prepared. But the silent test protects against that illusion. It reminds people that development is continuous. It keeps individuals grounded. It helps them remember that influence and responsibility should never be taken lightly. Because when someone eventually steps into a larger role, humility becomes one of the most important qualities they can carry with them. Without humility, influence can easily become pride. Without humility, leadership can become control. But those who have spent time in quiet preparation often approach opportunities with a different mindset. They recognize the weight of responsibility. They understand the importance of integrity. They value the lessons learned during the silent seasons. Another reason the silent test matters so much is that it reveals integrity. Integrity means remaining true to your values, even when circumstances make compromise seem easier. During the silent test, there may be moments where shortcuts appear tempting. Opportunities may arise that promise faster results, but require abandoning important principles. In those moments, a person's choices become extremely important. Because integrity is not proven when decisions are easy. Integrity is proven when someone chooses the right path, even though it requires patience. And those choices accumulate over time. Small decisions made in quiet moments slowly shape the kind of person someone becomes. By the time the silent test ends, the transformation may not be obvious to others. But internally, something powerful has happened. Patience has deepened. Conviction has strengthened. Humility has matured. Integrity has been reinforced. These qualities may not attract attention immediately, but they form the foundation for everything that comes next. And this is why the silent test is so significant. Because the purpose of the test is not to slow someone down. It is to make sure that when the right moment arrives, they are ready. Ready not only in skill, but in character. Because skill can open doors. But character determines whether someone can remain in the room once those doors open. So if you ever find yourself in a season where life feels unusually quiet, where progress seems slower than you expected, where recognition is limited and the future feels uncertain, it may not mean you are falling behind. It may mean something deeper is taking place. You may be in a season where the most important development is happening internally. A season where character is being refined. A season where patience is being strengthened. A season where integrity is being tested in ways that nobody else can see. And although the silent test can feel uncomfortable, it carries an important promise. Because those who remain faithful during the quiet seasons often discover something remarkable later. The very season that once felt slow was actually preparing them for something far greater than they imagined. One of the most difficult things for people to accept is that silence can be intentional. In human relationships, silence often feels uncomfortable. When someone stops speaking, when messages go unanswered, or when communication fades, people immediately assume something is wrong. Silence usually feels like distance. It feels like absence. It feels like rejection. Because of that, when people experience a season where God seems quiet, many reach the same conclusion. They assume God has stepped away. They assume their prayers are being ignored. They assume something in their life must have gone terribly wrong. But throughout history, and throughout the stories found in Scripture, there is a pattern that reveals something very different. Sometimes silence is not abandonment. Sometimes silence is observation. Sometimes silence is preparation. And sometimes silence is a test. But not the kind of test people normally imagine. When people think of tests, they often imagine challenges where the rules are clear. A test at school has instructions. A competition has visible criteria. A performance review has measurable expectations. But the silent test works differently. It has no announcement, no visible scoring, no obvious moment when the test begins or ends. Instead, it unfolds quietly within the normal rhythm of life. And this raises an important question. Why would God choose to test people in silence instead of giving them clear signs? The answer lies in what silence reveals. Because silence exposes motivations. When blessings are visible and progress is exciting, many people stay motivated for reasons that have little to do with faith. They continue because success feels good. They continue because recognition is satisfying. They continue because the rewards are obvious. But when life becomes quiet, when the applause disappears and the results slow down, something deeper is revealed. Motivation begins to change. Some people lose their enthusiasm. Others lose their discipline. Some even lose their faith. But others respond differently. They continue moving forward, even though the rewards are not immediate. They continue believing, even though the answers are not obvious. They continue doing what is right, even though nobody seems to notice. And in that quiet persistence, their true motivation becomes visible. This is why silence is such a powerful test. Because it removes the distractions that often hide a person's real intentions. When no one is watching, the reason behind someone's actions becomes clear. Are they acting out of genuine conviction? Or are they acting only when recognition is available? Another reason silence is powerful is because it reveals the depth of faith. Faith is easy when life is filled with obvious blessings. It is easy to believe when prayers appear to be answered quickly. It is easy to trust when circumstances feel positive and hopeful. But faith becomes something entirely different when results are delayed. When prayers seem unanswered. When direction feels unclear. In those moments, belief is no longer supported by visible evidence. Instead, faith becomes a choice. A decision to continue trusting even when the outcome cannot yet be seen. And that kind of faith cannot be measured during comfortable seasons. It can only be revealed during quiet ones. Imagine a person who claims to trust God deeply. As long as life is moving smoothly, those words may sound convincing. But when progress slows down and the future becomes uncertain, the situation changes. Will they still trust? Will they still remain faithful? Will they continue moving forward with patience? Or will frustration slowly replace faith? The silent test answers these questions without requiring a single spoken instruction. Because silence creates space for genuine belief to appear or disappear. Silence also reveals how people handle recognition. Human nature often craves acknowledgement. People enjoy knowing that their efforts are seen. They appreciate praise. They value encouragement. There is nothing inherently wrong with that. But if recognition becomes the main reason someone continues working or serving, their motivation becomes fragile. Because the moment recognition disappears, their commitment may begin to fade as well. The silent test removes recognition for a period of time. It creates a season where effort feels unnoticed, where dedication seems invisible, where the work continues but the applause does not. And in that environment, something important becomes clear. Does the person continue anyway? Do they remain committed even when their efforts are not publicly celebrated? Because true character often grows in places where recognition is absent. Another reason God may allow silent tests is to strengthen patience. Patience is one of the most undervalued qualities in modern life. Everything in the world encourages speed, faster results, faster success, faster progress. But spiritual growth rarely follows that same pattern. Some of the most important transformations require time. They cannot be rushed. Wisdom develops through experience. Humility grows through reflection. Emotional strength often forms through challenges. And patience is usually built through waiting. The silent test slows life down just enough to allow these qualities to develop. Without waiting, patience cannot exist. Without uncertainty, trust cannot deepen. Without quiet seasons, reflection rarely occurs. And without reflection, growth can remain shallow. Silence also protects people from something dangerous: premature success. Many people believe that success arriving early is always a blessing. But sometimes success arriving too soon can be destructive. If someone gains influence before developing humility, pride can take control. If someone receives responsibility before learning patience, pressure can overwhelm them. If someone gains power before building integrity, their decisions can harm both themselves and others. The silent test acts as a safeguard. It ensures that character grows alongside opportunity. It ensures that maturity develops before influence expands. And this protection often happens quietly, without announcements, without explanations. Another reason silent tests exist is because they strengthen resilience. Resilience is the ability to continue moving forward even when circumstances are difficult. And resilience cannot be built in comfortable conditions. It forms through challenges, through delays, through moments where perseverance becomes necessary. During the silent season, people learn how to endure uncertainty. They learn how to remain disciplined even when motivation fades. They learn how to continue believing when external signs are limited. These experiences create emotional and spiritual strength. Strength that will eventually become essential when new responsibilities appear. Because when someone steps into a greater role, life rarely becomes easier. Leadership often brings pressure. Purpose often brings opposition. Influence often brings criticism. And without resilience, those pressures can become overwhelming. The silent test prepares people for those realities before they encounter them. But perhaps the most important reason silence exists is because it separates those who are truly committed from those who are simply interested. Interest is temporary. Commitment is enduring. When people are interested in something, they participate as long as the experience remains exciting. But when someone is committed, they continue even when excitement fades. The silent test removes excitement for a period of time. It replaces visible progress with patience. It replaces recognition with quiet effort. And through that process, it reveals who is truly committed to their calling. Those who are only interested may eventually walk away. But those who are committed remain. They continue growing. They continue preparing. They continue believing that the quiet season has meaning, even if they cannot fully see it yet. And eventually, the silent test ends. Not because someone demanded it to end. Not because someone forced the process to move faster. But because the preparation has quietly completed its work. When that moment arrives, something remarkable often happens. The person who once wondered why life felt so quiet suddenly begins to see opportunities appearing. Doors that once seemed closed begin to open. The direction that once felt uncertain becomes clearer. And the individual who endured the silence realizes something surprising. The quiet season was never empty. It was full of preparation all along. Because silence was not the absence of activity. It was the environment where character, patience, faith, and resilience were being formed. And those qualities will soon prove to be far more valuable than any quick success that could have arrived earlier. If the silent test were only a modern idea, many people might question whether it is truly meaningful. But when we look through the stories recorded in Scripture, something remarkable becomes clear. The pattern appears again and again. Before God entrusted someone with something significant, that person almost always passed through a hidden season first. A season where very few people understood what was happening. A season where progress looked slow. A season where preparation happened quietly, far away from recognition. This pattern appears so consistently that it is difficult to ignore. It is almost as if God intentionally chooses to develop people privately before revealing them publicly. One of the clearest examples of this pattern is the story of Joseph. When Joseph was young, he received dreams that suggested his future would be extraordinary. The dreams hinted that he would one day hold a position of influence and leadership. But the path between that promise and its fulfillment was not quick. Instead, Joseph experienced betrayal. His own brothers sold him into slavery. Suddenly, the future that once seemed bright became uncertain and painful. Joseph found himself far from home, working as a servant in a foreign land. And even when he remained faithful in that difficult situation, things did not immediately improve. He was falsely accused and thrown into prison. For many people, prison would have felt like the end of the story. Years passed. No recognition, no promotion, no visible progress toward the dreams he once had. It would have been easy for Joseph to believe that everything had gone wrong. But something important was happening during those hidden years. Joseph's character was being tested. Would he become bitter? Would he lose integrity? Would he abandon his faith? Instead of allowing hardship to corrupt him, Joseph remained consistent. Even in prison, he continued acting with wisdom and responsibility. And when the right moment finally arrived, everything changed quickly. Joseph interpreted a dream for Pharaoh, and almost overnight he was elevated to one of the most powerful positions in Egypt. But that sudden elevation was only possible because the silent years had already prepared him. Without those years of hidden development, Joseph may not have had the wisdom or humility required to lead a nation during a time of crisis. Another powerful example is the life of David. Before David ever wore a crown, he spent years in obscurity. He was a shepherd. Day after day, he cared for sheep in the quiet fields outside his home. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary life. No crowds, no recognition, no indication that he would one day become king. But those quiet fields became a place of preparation. David learned responsibility while protecting the flock. He developed courage while facing wild animals that threatened the sheep. He learned patience through long hours of solitude. And in those quiet moments, his relationship with God deepened. Many of the Psalms David later wrote were shaped by the reflections he experienced during those early years. The silent season built something inside him that public success alone could never create. Later, when David faced the giant Goliath, the courage he displayed did not appear suddenly. It had already been formed in private moments that few people had seen. Even after defeating Goliath, David did not immediately become king. Instead, he entered another long season of waiting. Although he had been anointed for leadership, years passed before he actually stepped into that role. During that time, he faced danger, uncertainty, and constant pressure. But those experiences refined his character even further. When David finally became king, he was not simply a talented leader. He was someone whose character had been shaped through long seasons of hidden preparation. Another example appears in the life of Moses. Before Moses led an entire nation out of Egypt, he spent 40 years living in the wilderness. 40 years. That is an entire lifetime for many people. At one point, Moses had grown up in the palace of Egypt, surrounded by wealth and power. But after a series of events forced him to flee, he found himself living as a shepherd in the desert. To many observers, it probably looked like his story had taken an unexpected and disappointing turn. Instead of leading people, he was leading sheep. Instead of influence, he had isolation. Instead of power, he had quiet routine. But the wilderness was not wasted time. It was preparation. The desert taught Moses humility. It taught him patience. It taught him how to depend on God rather than relying on the strength and education he had received in Egypt. When the moment finally arrived for Moses to confront Pharaoh and lead the Israelites to freedom, he was not the same man who had fled Egypt years earlier. He had been refined by the silent season. Even the life of Jesus followed this pattern. Before his public ministry began, Jesus spent many years in quiet preparation. The Bible records very little about those early years. He lived an ordinary life in Nazareth. He worked. He grew. He learned. From the outside, nothing about that period seemed extraordinary. Yet those years were part of a larger process. And when the time for his ministry finally arrived, Jesus entered another season of testing. He went into the wilderness for 40 days. During that time, he faced temptation and spiritual challenges. The wilderness was not a public stage. It was a place of solitude. But that hidden testing became an important part of his preparation before his message reached the world. These stories reveal a pattern that appears repeatedly. Joseph had the prison. David had the fields. Moses had the wilderness. Jesus had the desert. Each of them experienced a season where their lives seemed quiet, hidden, or slow. But those seasons were not meaningless. They were the environment where character was strengthened and purpose was clarified. This pattern teaches something important. Public moments often attract attention, but private seasons build the foundation for those moments. When people see someone stepping into influence, They often assume success appeared suddenly. They see the moment of recognition, but not the years of preparation. They see the crown, but not the wilderness. They see the victory, but not the silent battles that came before it. But the silent seasons matter more than most people realize. Because what happens during those hidden years determines whether someone will be ready when opportunity finally arrives. Imagine if Joseph had become a leader before learning patience. Imagine if David had become king before developing humility. Imagine if Moses had confronted Pharaoh without the lessons he learned in the wilderness. The outcome might have been very different. Preparation protects purpose. It ensures that when responsibility increases, the person carrying that responsibility is ready. And this principle still applies today. Many people focus only on the visible parts of success. They want the influence. They want the recognition. They want the opportunities. But fewer people appreciate the value of the quiet seasons that come first. The silent test is not a punishment. It is part of a pattern that has shaped countless lives throughout history. It is a stage where character grows stronger than circumstances. It is a place where faith becomes deeper than feelings. It is the environment where patience learns to trust timing. And when people remain faithful during those hidden seasons, they often discover something surprising later. The same season that once felt slow and uncertain becomes the very reason they were ready for what came next. Because preparation always happens before elevation. And the stories of Joseph, David, Moses, and Jesus remind us that God rarely rushes the process. He builds slowly, carefully, intentionally, so that when the moment finally arrives, the person stepping into it is not only capable, but ready. When people go through a silent season, one of the most difficult feelings they experience is uncertainty. They wonder if their efforts matter. They question whether their prayers are being heard. They ask themselves if their work is making any difference at all. From the outside, it can feel like nobody is paying attention. But the truth is, the silent test is never meaningless. During these quiet seasons, something very specific is happening. God is watching, not in a distant or indifferent way, but in a deeply intentional way. Because the silent test is not random. It is a moment of observation. And during this time, God is not primarily watching how impressive someone's achievements are. He is watching something far more important. He is watching who they are becoming. There are several qualities that often become visible during the silent test. These qualities reveal whether a person is truly prepared for greater responsibility. One of the first things being observed is consistency. Consistency is one of the rarest qualities in the world. Many people begin with enthusiasm. They start new goals with excitement. They begin projects with passion. But over time, that excitement often fades. The initial energy disappears, and many people slowly lose momentum. Consistency means continuing even when excitement fades. It means showing up when motivation is low. It means doing the right thing even when no one is rewarding you for it. During the silent season, consistency becomes incredibly important because external motivation is limited. There may be no applause. There may be no recognition. There may be no visible progress for a long time. Yet the person who continues moving forward during those moments reveals something powerful about their character. They are not dependent on excitement. They are not dependent on attention. They are guided by commitment. And commitment is what makes long-term purpose possible. Another quality that becomes visible during the silent test is faith without visible results. Many people believe they have strong faith, but faith is easiest when results appear quickly. It is easy to trust when prayers are answered immediately. It is easy to believe when doors open without delay. But when life becomes quiet, faith becomes something deeper. It becomes a decision, a choice to continue believing even when there are no immediate signs that anything is changing. During the silent test, people often pray and wait. They hope and trust. But sometimes the answers they are expecting do not appear right away. This is where true faith begins to grow. Because faith that depends on constant results is fragile. But faith that remains steady during uncertainty becomes resilient. And resilient faith is essential for anyone who will eventually carry greater responsibility. Another important quality revealed during the silent test is character under pressure. Pressure has a unique way of revealing what is inside a person. When life feels comfortable, people can easily appear kind, patient, and disciplined. But when circumstances become frustrating, those qualities are tested. Imagine someone who has worked hard for years but still feels unnoticed. Imagine someone who continues serving faithfully while others seem to receive faster recognition. Imagine someone who remains committed even when progress feels slow. In those situations, frustration can easily appear. Bitterness can slowly grow. Discouragement can become overwhelming. And yet, some people respond differently. Instead of allowing pressure to make them cynical, they choose patience. Instead of becoming bitter, they choose gratitude. Instead of giving up, they continue developing their character. These responses reveal a level of emotional and spiritual maturity that cannot be developed in easy seasons. Pressure becomes a refining force. It removes weaknesses. It strengthens resilience. And it prepares someone for the challenges they will eventually face in greater roles. Another quality that becomes visible during the silent season is humility. Humility is often misunderstood. Some people believe humility means thinking poorly of oneself. But true humility is something different. It is the ability to recognize that growth is ongoing. It is the willingness to remain teachable. It is the awareness that influence should always be handled with care. During the silent test, humility grows because the spotlight is absent. There are no large crowds applauding. There are no constant reminders of success. Instead, life becomes simple and quiet. And in that quiet space, people learn to focus on becoming better rather than appearing impressive. They learn to value progress that others may never see. They learn that their worth is not defined by recognition. This kind of humility becomes extremely important later. Because when someone eventually receives influence, the presence or absence of humility can determine whether that influence is used wisely. Without humility, success can easily turn into pride. Without humility, leadership can become self-centered. But those who have spent time in quiet preparation often carry their influence differently. They remember the silent seasons. They remember the lessons learned when no one was watching. And those memories keep them grounded. Another quality that becomes visible during the silent test is integrity. Integrity means doing the right thing even when it would be easier to compromise. It means staying true to your values even when no one else is paying attention. During the silent season, integrity is often tested in subtle ways. A person might feel tempted to take shortcuts in order to accelerate progress. They might consider compromising certain principles to gain faster recognition. They might even question whether their values are worth maintaining when others appear to succeed without them. These moments are important because the decisions someone makes in private often determine what kind of opportunities they can safely handle later. Integrity builds trust. Without trust, influence becomes dangerous. If someone cannot be trusted in small decisions, greater responsibility becomes risky. But when someone consistently demonstrates integrity, even when compromise would be easier, they prove that they are ready for something more. Another aspect God often watches during the silent season is how someone treats others while they are waiting. Waiting can reveal attitudes that normally remain hidden. Some people become impatient and begin treating others harshly. Some become resentful toward those who appear to be moving ahead faster. But others respond with kindness. They encourage others even while they themselves are still waiting. They celebrate the success of others without allowing comparison to poison their perspective. This attitude reflects emotional maturity. It demonstrates that someone's heart remains healthy even when circumstances are challenging. And a healthy heart is essential for anyone who will eventually influence others. Because influence multiplies what already exists inside a person. If someone carries bitterness into a leadership position, that bitterness can affect many people. But if someone carries humility, patience, and compassion, those qualities can create environments where others thrive. Perhaps the most powerful thing God observes during the silent test is perseverance. Perseverance is the ability to continue moving forward even when the path feels long. It is the determination to stay committed even when motivation fades. Many people begin their journeys with excitement. But over time, the reality of slow progress can become discouraging. Dreams may take longer than expected. Goals may require more patience than originally imagined. And some people eventually decide the journey is not worth the effort. But perseverance transforms individuals in ways that quick success never could. Each day someone continues despite difficulty, their resilience grows. Each moment they choose discipline over frustration, their character strengthens. Each time they remain faithful during uncertainty, their trust deepens. And over time, those small choices accumulate. They create a foundation strong enough to support the responsibilities that may come later. Because perseverance proves that someone can endure challenges without abandoning their purpose. And endurance is essential for anyone who will eventually face larger opportunities or greater pressure. The silent test is not about perfection. No one responds perfectly to every challenge. Everyone experiences moments of doubt, frustration, or fear. But the overall direction of someone's life during the silent season reveals something important. Do they continue growing? Do they continue trusting? Do they continue becoming the kind of person who can carry greater responsibility? Because eventually, the silent season ends. And when it does, the qualities developed during that time become visible. Consistency, faith, humility, integrity, perseverance. These qualities cannot be rushed. They cannot be manufactured overnight. They must be formed slowly, often in places where very few people are watching. But once they are established, they become the foundation for everything that follows. And that is why the silent test matters so much. Because when the moment finally arrives for someone to step into something greater, the question will not simply be whether they have talent. The question will be whether their character is strong enough to carry the responsibility that comes with it. And the silent season quietly answers that question long before the opportunity appears. The silent test is powerful, but it is also difficult. Not because the challenges are always dramatic or overwhelming, but because the difficulty often appears in quiet, subtle ways. There are no obvious warning signs. There is no clear moment when someone announces, "You are now being tested." Instead, the silent season unfolds slowly. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. Sometimes even years. And during that time, many people begin to feel something that is surprisingly heavy. Discouragement. At first, the person may remain hopeful. They continue working. They continue praying. They continue believing that something good is coming. But as time passes and visible change remains small, a quiet frustration can begin to grow. They start asking questions that feel impossible to answer. Why is nothing changing? Why do others seem to move ahead faster? Why does it feel like my efforts are invisible? These questions are normal. Everyone experiences them at some point. But how someone responds to those questions often determines whether they pass the silent test or fail it. One of the most common reasons people fail the silent test is impatience. Impatience is powerful because it disguises itself as urgency. A person may believe they simply want to move forward with their life. They may convince themselves that waiting any longer is unnecessary. But impatience often leads to decisions that are made too quickly. When people become impatient, they begin searching for faster paths. They look for shortcuts. They chase opportunities that promise immediate results rather than long-term purpose. Sometimes those shortcuts appear attractive. They seem easier. They seem faster. But shortcuts often bypass the preparation that makes success sustainable. Without preparation, opportunity can become overwhelming. Responsibility can become stressful. Influence can become dangerous. Impatience pushes people to pursue the destination before they are ready for the journey. And in doing so, they miss the quiet growth that the silent season was meant to provide. Another reason many people fail the silent test is comparison. Comparison has become even more powerful in the modern world. People constantly see the achievements of others. They see promotions. They see success stories. They see moments of recognition and celebration. And without realizing it, they begin comparing their own progress to what they observe in someone else's life. Comparison creates the illusion that everyone else is moving faster. It makes waiting feel unfair. It makes patience feel like falling behind. But comparison rarely shows the full picture. People often see the visible success of others without understanding the private struggles that came before it. They see the moment of achievement, but not the years of preparation. And when someone constantly measures their life against the timeline of another person, frustration begins to grow. Instead of focusing on their own growth, they become distracted by someone else's journey. Instead of appreciating the lessons in their own season, they begin resenting the timing of their progress. Comparison shifts attention away from purpose and places it on competition. And when that happens, the silent test becomes harder to endure. Another reason people fail the silent test is bitterness. Bitterness rarely appears suddenly. It grows slowly. At first, it may begin as disappointment. Then disappointment turns into frustration. And over time, frustration can transform into resentment. Someone might begin thinking that life is unfair. They may believe their efforts are unappreciated. They may feel that others have received opportunities they deserved more. These thoughts may seem small at first, but if they continue growing, bitterness can quietly reshape a person's perspective. Instead of seeing the silent season as preparation, they begin seeing it as injustice. Instead of maintaining gratitude, they begin focusing on what they believe they have been denied. Bitterness changes how someone treats others. It changes how they interpret circumstances. And most importantly, it changes the condition of the heart. A bitter heart struggles to carry purpose well, because bitterness distorts judgment. It clouds wisdom. It replaces patience with anger. And this is why guarding the heart during the silent season is so important. Another reason people fail the silent test is the pursuit of validation. Human beings naturally desire approval. They want to know that their efforts matter. They want to feel seen and appreciated. But when someone begins relying too heavily on external validation, their sense of purpose becomes unstable. If recognition appears, they feel confident. If recognition disappears, they begin questioning their value. During the silent test, validation often becomes limited. People may continue doing meaningful work without receiving acknowledgement. Their progress may remain largely invisible to others. And in those moments, the temptation to chase validation can become strong. Someone may begin changing their direction simply to gain attention. They may abandon meaningful work in favor of activities that attract faster recognition. They may compromise their values to receive approval from the wrong people. But when purpose becomes dependent on validation, direction becomes inconsistent. Because validation is unpredictable, it rises and falls based on circumstances. And when someone builds their identity on something unstable, discouragement becomes inevitable. Another reason people fail the silent test is quitting too early. This may be the most common reason of all. The silent season can feel long. And when people cannot see immediate results, they often assume nothing is happening. They believe their efforts are wasted. They believe their prayers are unanswered. They believe their patience has no reward. But the most important growth during the silent test often happens internally. Patience is developing. Faith is strengthening. Character is maturing. These changes may not be visible on the outside, but they are forming the foundation for the future. When someone quits too early, they leave the process before that foundation is complete. It is similar to planting a seed. For a long time, nothing appears above the soil. But beneath the surface, roots are growing. If someone digs up the seed because they believe nothing is happening, they destroy the very process that would have produced growth. In the same way, leaving the silent season too early can interrupt preparation. Many people walk away just before the moment when the process was about to produce something meaningful. This is why perseverance matters so much. Not because perseverance guarantees immediate results, but because it allows the preparation process to reach completion. Those who remain faithful during the silent season often discover something surprising later. The waiting was not wasted. The quiet moments were not meaningless. The delays were not random. Instead, every moment of patience contributed to something deeper. They emerge from the silent season stronger than before, more resilient, more humble, more prepared for the responsibilities ahead. And the opportunities that eventually appear feel different. They do not feel overwhelming. They do not feel undeserved. They feel like the natural continuation of a journey that began long ago. Because the silent test is not designed to defeat people. It is designed to reveal them. It reveals who will remain faithful when circumstances are unclear. It reveals who will continue growing when progress is slow. It reveals who will protect their character even when compromise might bring faster success. And although many people fail this test, those who pass it discover something remarkable. The very season that once felt like delay becomes the reason they were ready for the future that eventually arrived. One of the most mysterious things about the silent test is this. No one ever knows exactly when it will end. There is no calendar notification, no warning sign, no announcement that says, your waiting season is almost finished. For a long time, everything can look exactly the same. Life continues in its ordinary rhythm. Work continues. Prayers continue. Efforts continue. And from the outside, it may still feel like nothing significant is changing. But behind the scenes, something begins to shift. Because the silent test rarely ends slowly. More often, it ends suddenly. And when that moment arrives, many people realize something surprising. The opportunity that appears often seems sudden to everyone else, but it was actually being prepared long before it arrived. This pattern appears repeatedly throughout life. A person may spend years developing skills quietly, learning, growing, building character. Yet during that time, very few people notice their progress. Then one day, something unexpected happens. A door opens. A connection appears. An opportunity arises that seems almost impossible to predict. And suddenly, the same people who never noticed the quiet preparation begin saying something familiar. Overnight success. But those who experience the silent season know the truth. There was nothing overnight about it. The breakthrough may appear quickly, but the preparation was slow and deliberate. The silent season had been shaping them long before the opportunity appeared. This is one of the most fascinating aspects of the silent test. While it feels quiet on the surface, it is often incredibly active beneath the surface. God is preparing the person, but at the same time, He is also preparing the moment. Think about it this way. Imagine someone who has been learning, growing, and developing patience for years. They may not realize it, but their character is becoming stronger. Their judgment is becoming wiser. Their emotional maturity is increasing. At the same time, circumstances in the world around them are slowly changing. People they have never met are moving into positions where they will eventually cross paths. Situations are developing that will require the exact skills they have been building. Timing is unfolding in ways no human mind could fully predict. And eventually, those two things intersect. Preparation meets opportunity. When that happens, the silent season begins to reveal its purpose. The opportunity that appears is not random. It is aligned with the person someone has become. This is why preparation matters so much. Because opportunity without preparation can be overwhelming. Imagine receiving influence before learning humility. Imagine receiving leadership before learning patience. Imagine receiving recognition before developing integrity. Without preparation, these opportunities can become destructive rather than meaningful. But when someone has been shaped by the silent season, something different happens. They step into opportunity with stability. They carry responsibility with wisdom. They handle influence with humility. And the very challenges that might overwhelm others become manageable because of the growth that happened earlier. Another surprising thing about the end of the silent season is that it often begins with something small. Many people expect dramatic breakthroughs. They imagine life-changing moments that arrive suddenly and transform everything overnight. But sometimes the first sign that the silent season is ending is incredibly simple. It might be a conversation, a new relationship, a small opportunity that initially seems ordinary, something that might appear insignificant at first. But small beginnings often carry hidden potential. A single conversation can lead to an unexpected partnership. A small opportunity can open the door to something larger. A simple act of kindness can create a connection that changes someone's path. This is why those who pass the silent test often remain attentive to small moments. They understand that purpose rarely begins with massive platforms. It often begins with quiet opportunities that gradually expand over time. Another important truth about the end of the silent season is that it does not mean challenges disappear. Some people believe that once the waiting period ends, life becomes easier. But in reality, new levels of opportunity often bring new levels of responsibility. Greater influence brings greater pressure. Greater impact brings greater expectations. And this is exactly why the silent season existed in the first place. It was building the resilience needed to carry those responsibilities well. Someone who has learned patience during long seasons of waiting will not panic when new challenges arise. Someone who has developed humility during quiet years will not become arrogant when recognition appears. Someone who has strengthened their faith during uncertainty will not lose confidence when obstacles appear again. The silent test does not eliminate difficulty. It prepares someone to face difficulty with strength. Another powerful aspect of this moment is clarity. During the silent season, life can feel confusing. People may wonder if they are on the right path. They may question whether their efforts are meaningful. But when the season begins to shift, clarity often begins to appear. Things that once felt uncertain start making sense. Connections between past experiences become visible. Skills that once seemed unrelated suddenly come together in meaningful ways. And the person begins to understand something that was previously hidden. Nothing was wasted. The difficult seasons, the quiet growth, the lessons learned during moments of frustration. All of it contributed to the person they have become. And that person is now capable of stepping into something greater. This realization often brings deep gratitude, because people begin to see their past through a different perspective. The waiting was not punishment. It was preparation. The silence was not abandonment. It was formation. And the challenges were not obstacles to their purpose. They were part of the path leading toward it. But even as the silent season begins to end, one important principle remains. The qualities that were developed during the silent test must continue. Consistency must remain. Humility must remain. Integrity must remain. Because the same character that prepared someone for opportunity is the character that will sustain them once the opportunity arrives. Those who forget this often struggle. They may allow success to replace discipline. They may allow recognition to replace humility. And when that happens, the very opportunities they once prayed for can become difficult to maintain. But those who remember the lessons of the silent season carry those lessons forward. They remain grounded. They remain grateful. They remain aware that every new level of responsibility requires the same commitment to growth that existed before. And that mindset allows them to continue growing long after the silent season has passed. Because the end of the silent test is not truly the end. It is the beginning of something new. The beginning of influence. The beginning of impact. The beginning of a larger purpose that could not have been carried earlier. And those who endured the quiet preparation often step into that moment with a deep understanding that shapes the rest of their journey. They understand that the greatest transformations often happen in silence, that the most important growth often happens when no one is watching, and that the seasons that once felt like delay were actually preparing them for the moment when their purpose would finally begin to unfold. If the silent test is real, and if many people fail it, then an important question naturally follows. How can someone pass it? How can a person remain faithful in a season where answers feel distant, progress feels slow, and recognition is almost non-existent? The truth is, passing the silent test is not about being perfect. It is about developing the right posture of the heart while the process unfolds. And there are several principles that consistently appear in the lives of people who endure these seasons well. The first principle is learning to trust the process even when the outcome is unclear. Human beings naturally prefer certainty. We want to know where we are going. We want to see visible progress. We want reassurance that our efforts are leading somewhere meaningful. But the silent season often removes that clarity. Instead of seeing the entire path ahead, a person may only see the next step. This can feel uncomfortable. It can even feel frightening. But trust grows precisely in moments like these. Trust means continuing to move forward even when the final destination is hidden. It means believing that the lessons being learned now will eventually make sense later. And many people who eventually step into great purpose look back and realize something surprising. The uncertainty they once feared became the very environment where their faith and resilience were strengthened the most. The second principle is remaining faithful in small responsibilities. One of the most common mistakes people make during the silent season is believing that small tasks are insignificant. They think their real purpose will begin later, when bigger opportunities appear. But purpose often reveals itself through the way someone handles ordinary responsibilities. Showing up consistently, completing tasks with integrity, helping others without expecting recognition. These actions may seem small, but they build habits of excellence and reliability. And those habits become incredibly valuable later when larger responsibilities appear. People who cannot be trusted with small responsibilities often struggle when greater influence arrives. But those who learn to treat small moments with care develop a mindset that prepares them for larger opportunities. The third principle is guarding your heart from bitterness. As time passes in the silent season, discouragement can quietly grow. A person may begin noticing others who seem to move ahead faster. They may feel overlooked. They may feel that their patience is not being rewarded. If those thoughts continue growing, bitterness can slowly take root. And bitterness is dangerous because it changes how someone sees the world. It turns gratitude into resentment. It turns patience into frustration. It turns hope into suspicion. Guarding the heart during the silent season is essential. This means intentionally choosing gratitude even when circumstances are difficult. It means remembering the lessons being learned rather than focusing only on what has not yet happened. A grateful heart remains open to growth. A bitter heart often closes itself to it. The fourth principle is continuing to grow even when progress feels invisible. Many people only pursue growth when results are obvious. They study when exams are approaching. They practice when competitions are near. They improve their skills when they know someone important is watching. But the silent season invites a different kind of growth. Growth without an audience. Learning without immediate reward. Improving simply because it is the right thing to do. This kind of growth builds discipline. And discipline becomes one of the most powerful advantages a person can possess. Because when opportunity finally appears, those who have been quietly improving are already prepared to step into it. They do not need months to catch up. They have been preparing all along. The fifth principle is developing patience without losing momentum. Patience is often misunderstood. Some people believe patience means doing nothing while waiting for life to change. But true patience looks very different. Patience means continuing to move forward even when results take time. It means remaining consistent even when motivation fluctuates. It means understanding that meaningful growth often unfolds slowly. Patience combined with steady action creates powerful momentum. Each small step may seem insignificant by itself, but over time, those steps accumulate. And the person who continued moving forward eventually discovers they have traveled much farther than they realized. The sixth principle is learning humility during the quiet season. Success can test a person's character in ways that failure rarely does. Recognition can change how someone sees themselves. Influence can create temptation to prioritize ego over purpose. This is why humility developed during the silent season becomes so valuable. When someone spends years growing without recognition, they learn something important. Their value does not depend on applause. Their identity does not depend on public approval. They become comfortable doing meaningful work without needing constant validation. And when success eventually arrives, humility protects them from allowing recognition to distort their character. Humility keeps them grounded. It reminds them that every opportunity is a responsibility rather than a trophy. The seventh principle is remaining spiritually connected during the silence. For many people, the most difficult part of the silent season is the feeling that God seems quiet. Prayers may feel unanswered. Guidance may feel unclear. Moments that once felt spiritually vibrant may now feel distant. But this is often where the deepest spiritual growth occurs, because faith that depends only on emotional reassurance can easily fade. But faith that continues even when emotions fluctuate becomes stronger. Remaining connected through prayer, reflection, and spiritual discipline allows a person to maintain perspective. It reminds them that silence does not mean absence. It reminds them that growth is still happening even when it cannot be easily seen. And over time, that quiet faith becomes a source of incredible strength. When someone practices these principles, something powerful begins to happen. The silent season no longer feels like wasted time. Instead, it becomes a training ground. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen character. Every delay becomes an invitation to deepen patience. Every quiet moment becomes a space where growth can take place without distraction. And eventually, something remarkable occurs. The very season that once felt frustrating becomes the reason someone is ready for the future that awaits them. Because the silent test was never meant to stop someone from moving forward. It was meant to shape them into the kind of person who can carry their purpose wisely. And those who learn to endure this season with trust, patience, and humility often discover that the quiet years were not empty at all. They were building the foundation for everything that comes next. At some point in life, almost everyone encounters a season that feels strangely quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet that raises questions. The kind of quiet where prayers seem to rise into the air and disappear without an obvious answer. The kind of quiet where effort continues, yet visible results seem slow or completely absent. Many people misinterpret these seasons. They assume something must be wrong. They wonder if they made a mistake. They question whether they are truly moving in the right direction. And slowly, doubt begins to whisper the same dangerous message. Maybe this is all pointless. But what if that interpretation is completely wrong? What if the quiet season is not a sign that nothing is happening, but evidence that something important is being prepared? Because one of the most surprising truths about personal transformation is that the most important growth often happens in silence. Think about the moments in life that shape a person most deeply. It is rarely the moments of applause. It is rarely the moments of public success. More often, transformation happens during private struggles, during long nights of reflection, during seasons where patience must be practiced daily. These are the moments where character is forged, where resilience is built, where someone begins to understand themselves more clearly than ever before. The silent test exists in that exact space. It is not designed to embarrass someone. It is not meant to discourage them, and it is certainly not meant to destroy their confidence. Instead, it is designed to reveal something far more important: who someone truly is when no one is watching. Because it is easy to remain faithful when results are obvious. It is easy to remain hopeful when progress is fast. It is easy to remain motivated when encouragement constantly surrounds us. But when those things disappear, something deeper is revealed: integrity, commitment, faith, purpose. These qualities become visible not through comfort, but through perseverance. And this is why the silent season matters so much. Because it asks a question that cannot be answered with words, only with actions. The question is simple: who are you becoming when recognition is absent? Are you still growing? Are you still learning? Are you still striving to become a better version of yourself? Or do you allow discouragement to slowly replace determination? Everyone faces this choice at some point. Some people allow the quiet season to break their spirit. They stop trying. They lose faith in the process. And eventually, they step away from the very path that might have led them somewhere meaningful. But others respond differently. They continue growing even when progress is slow. They continue practicing discipline even when no one notices. They continue trusting that the lessons they are learning now will matter later. And over time, this quiet perseverance begins to produce something remarkable: strength. The kind of strength that cannot be faked. The kind of strength that does not collapse when difficulty appears. Because it was built during seasons where perseverance was required every single day. This strength becomes the foundation for everything that follows. When opportunity finally appears, these individuals are ready. Not because they suddenly became capable overnight, but because they were slowly becoming capable all along. Every difficult moment taught them patience. Every delay taught them endurance. Every silent prayer strengthened their faith. And eventually, the moment arrives where preparation meets opportunity. When that happens, something beautiful becomes visible. The silent season was never wasted. It was shaping the person who would eventually step forward. And once someone understands this truth, their perspective on difficult seasons begins to change. Silence no longer feels like abandonment. It begins to feel like preparation. Waiting no longer feels like punishment. It becomes part of the process. And challenges no longer feel like random obstacles. They begin to look like training. This realization brings a powerful sense of peace. Because the person understands something many people never realize. Life is not only about the destination. It is about the transformation that happens along the way. And sometimes, the quiet seasons are where that transformation happens most deeply. So if you find yourself in a silent season right now, if life feels slower than you expected, if answers seem distant and progress seems invisible, do not assume that nothing is happening. Look more closely. You may discover that something far more important is unfolding beneath the surface. Patience is growing. Wisdom is developing. Character is strengthening. And the person you are becoming today may be exactly the person needed for the opportunities waiting tomorrow. The silent test is not meant to stop your journey. It is meant to prepare you for the road ahead. And one day, when you look back at this quiet season, you may realize something incredible. The time you once believed was empty was actually the time that changed everything.